Checkmate is a game position in chess in which a player's king is in check and there is no way to remove the threat. Checkmating the opponent wins the game. In chess, the king is never actually captured. The game ends as soon as the king is checkmated. In master and serious amateur play, most players resign an inevitably lost game before being checkmated, and it is considered bad etiquette to continue playing in a completely hopeless position. If a player is not in check but has no legal move, then it is stalemate, and the game immediately ends in a draw. A checkmating move is recorded in algebraic notation using the hash symbol, for example, 34Q8 hash. Examples: a checkmate may occur in as few as 2 moves with all of the pieces still on the board, in a middle game position, or after many moves with as few as 3 pieces in an endgame position. Etymology: the term checkmate is, according to the Barnhart Etymological Dictionary, an alteration of the Farsi phrase shahmat, which means, literally, the king is helpless. Others maintain that it means, the king is dead, as chess reached Europe via the Islamic world, and Arabic mata means, died, or is dead. However, in the Pashto language, the word mat still exists, meaning, destroyed, broken. Mofaddam traced the etymology of the word mate. It comes from a Persian verb mandan, meaning to remain, which is cognate with the Latin word manio and the Greek meno. It means remained in the sense of abandoned, and the formal translation is surprised, in the military sense of ambushed. Shah is the Persian word for the monarch. Players would announce Shah when the king was in check. Mat is a Persian adjective for at or lost, helpless, or defeated. So the king is in mate when he is ambushed, at or lost, helpless, defeated, or abandoned to his fate. In modern Persian, the word mate depicts a person who is frozen, open-mouthed, staring, confused and unresponsive. The words stupefied or stunned bear close correlation. So a possible alternative would be to interpret mate as unable to respond. A king is mate then means, a king is unable to respond, which would correspond to there being no response that a player's king can make to their opponent's final move. This interpretation is much closer to the original intent of the game being not to kill a king but to leave him with no viable response other than surrender, which better matches the origin story detailed in the Shahnameh. In modern parlance, the term checkmate is a metaphor for an irrefutable and strategic victory. History: in early Sanskrit chess, the king could be captured and this ended the game. The Persians introduced the idea of warning that the king was under attack. This was done to avoid the early and accidental end of a game. Later the Persians added the additional rule that a king could not be moved into check or left in check. As a result, the king could not be captured, and checkmate was the only decisive way of ending a game. Before about 1600, the game could also be won by capturing all of the opponent's pieces, leaving just a bare king. This style of play is now called annihilation or robardo. In medieval times, players began to consider it nobler to win by checkmate, so annihilation became a half-win for a while, until it was abandoned. Two major pieces can easily force checkmate on the edge of the board. The process is to put the 2 pieces on adjacent ranks of files and gradually force the king to the side of the board, where one piece keeps the king on the edge of the board while the other delivers checkmate. In the illustration, white checkmates by forcing the black king to the edge, one row at a time. The same process can also be used to checkmate with 2 rooks, or with 2 queens. Basic checkmates. There are 4 fundamental checkmates when one side has only his king and the other side has only the minimum material needed to force checkmate, i.e., 1 queen, 1 rook, 2 bishops on opposite colored squares, or a bishop and a knight. The king must help in accomplishing all of these checkmates. If the superior side has more material, checkmates are easier. The checkmate with the queen is the most common, and easiest to achieve. It often occurs after a pawn has queened. A checkmate with the rook is also common, but a checkmate with the two bishops or with a bishop and knight only occur relatively infrequently. The two-bishop checkmate is fairly easy to accomplish, but the bishop and knight checkmate is difficult and requires precision. King and queen. The first two diagrams show representatives of the basic checkmate positions with a queen, which can occur on any edge of the board. Naturally, the exact position can vary from the diagram. In the first of the checkmate positions, the queen is directly in front of the opposing king and the white king is protecting its queen. In the second checkmate position, the kings are in opposition and the queen mates on the rank of the king. With the side with the queen to move, checkmate can be forced in at most 10 moves from any starting position, with optimal play by both sides, but usually fewer moves are required. In positions in which a pawn has just promoted to a queen, at most 9 moves are required. In the position at left, white checkmates by confining the black king to a rectangle and shrinking the rectangle to force the king to the edge of the board. 1. Qf6 kd5 2. Qe7 kd4 3. Kc2 kd5 4. Kc3 kc6 5. Kc4 kilobits 6 6. Qd7 car6 7. Qb5 plus car7 8. Kc5 car8 9. Kc6 car7 10. Qb7 hash. Avoid stalemate. The superior side must be careful to not stalemate the opposing king, whereas the defender would like to get into such a position. There are two general types of stalemate positions that can occur, which the strongest side must avoid. King in rook. The first diagram shows the basic checkmate position with a rook, which can occur on any edge of the board. The black king can be on any square on the edge of the board. The white king is in opposition to it, and the rook can check from any square on the rank of file. The second diagram shows a slightly different position where the kings are not in opposition, but the defending king must be in a corner. With the side with the rook to move, checkmate can be forced in at most 16 moves from any starting position. Again, see Wikibooks Chess the End Game for a demonstration of how the king and rook versus king mate is achieved. In the third diagram position, white checkmates by confining the black king to a rectangle and shrinking the rectangle to force the king to the edge of the board. 1. Kd3 plus Kd5 2. Re4 Kd6 3. Kc4. Kc6 4. Re6 plus Kc7 5. Kc5 Kd7 6. Kd5 Kc7 7. Road 6 kilobits 7 8. Rc6 car7 9. Kc5 kilobits 7 10. Kb5 car7 11. Rb6 car8 12. Kc6 car7 13. Kc7 car8 14. Ra6 hash. Avoid stalemate. There are two stalemate positions. King in two bishops. Here are the two basic checkmate positions with two bishops, which can occur in any corner. The first is a checkmate in the corner. The second position is a checkmate in a side square next to the corner square. With the side with the bishops to move, checkmate can be forced in at most 19 moves. If the side with the bishops is to move, they can force checkmate except in some very rare positions. It is not too difficult for two bishops to force checkmate with the aid of the king. Two principles apply. The bishops are best when they are near the center of the board and on adjacent diagonals. This cuts off the opposing king. The king must be used aggressively, in conjunction with the bishops. In the position from say Ra1, white wins by first forcing the black king to the side of the board, then to a corner, and then checkmates. It can be any side of the board and any corner. The process is 1. ke2 ke4 2, b3 ke5 3, kd3 kd5 4, bd4 ke6 5, ke4 kd6 6, bc4 6, kc6 7, ke5 kd7 8, bd5 8, kc7 9, bc5 kd7 10, bd6 10, ke8 11, ke6 11, kd8 12, bc6 12, kc8 13, kd5 13, kd8 14, kc5 kc8 15, kb6 kd8 16, bc5 kc8 17, b7 17, kb8 18, bd7 18, car8 19, bd8 19, kb8 20, bc7 plus car8 21, bc6 hash. Note that this is not the shortest forced checkmate from this position. Muller and Lamprecht give a 15-move solution, however it contains an inaccurate move by black. Avoid stalemate. One example of a stalemate is this position, where 1 kb6 would be stalemate, king, bishop and knight of the basic checkmates. This is the most difficult one to force, because these two pieces cannot form a linear barrier to the enemy king from a distance. Also, the checkmate can be forced only in a corner that the bishop controls. Two basic checkmate positions are shown with a bishop and a knight, or the bishop and knight checkmate. The first position is a checkmate by the bishop, with the black king in the corner. The bishop can be on other squares along the diagonal. The white king and knight have to be on squares that attack g8 and h7. The second position is a checkmate by the knight, with the black king on a side square next to the corner. The knight can be on other squares that check the black king. The white king must be on a square to protect the bishop and cover a square not covered by the knight. With the side with the bishop and knight to move, checkmate can be forced in at most 33 moves from any starting position, except those in which the defending king is initially forking the bishop and knight and it is not possible to defend both. However, the mating process requires accurate play, since a few errors could result in a draw either by the 50-move rule or stalemate. Opinions differ as to whether or not a player should learn this checkmate procedure. James Howell omits the checkmate with two bishops in his book because it rarely occurs but includes the bishop and knight checkmate. Howell says that he has had it 3 times and that it occurs more often than the checkmate with two bishops. On the other hand, Jeremy Silman includes the checkmate with two bishops but not the bishop plus knight checkmate because he has had it only once and his friend John Watson has never had it. Silman says, mastering it would take a significant chunk of time. Should the chess hopeful really spend many of his precious hours he's put aside for chess study learning an endgame he will achieve only once or twice in his lifetime? Avoid stalemate. This position is an example of a stalemate, for the end of a 1966 endgame study by H. Branton. White has just moved 1 r3 plus. If black moves 1 kc1 then white must move his bishop to save it because if the bishop is captured the position is a draw because of the insufficient material rule. But after any bishop move, the position is a stalemate. Common checkmates. Back rank mate. A back rank checkmate is a checkmate delivered by a rook or queen along a back rank in which the mated king is unable to move up the board because the king is blocked by friendly pieces on the second rank. An example of a back rank checkmate is shown in one of the diagrams. It is also known as the corridor mate. Scalars mate. Scalars mate is the checkmate achieved by the moves 1 e4 e5 2, qh5 nc6 3, bc4 n f6, 4, Qx f7 #. The moves might be played in a different order or in slight variation, but the basic idea is the same. The queen and bishop combine in a simple mating attack on f7. There are also other ways to checkmate in 4 moves. Fool's mate, also known as the 2-move checkmate, is the quickest possible checkmate. A prime example consists of the moves 1. f3 e5 2. g4 qh4 #, resulting in the position shown. Smothered mate. A smothered mate is a checkmate delivered by a knight in which the mated king is unable to move because he is surrounded by his own pieces. The mate is usually seen in a corner of the board, since fewer pieces are needed to surround the king there. The most common form of smothered mate is seen in the diagram to the right. The knight on f7 delivers mate to the king on h8, which is prevented from escaping the check by the rook on g8 and the pawns on g7 and h7. Similarly, white can be mated with the white king on h1 and the knight on f2. Analogous mates on a1 and a8 are rarer, because kingside castling is the more common, as it safely places the king closer to the corner than it would had the castling occurred on the queenside. Rare checkmates. In some rare positions it is possible to force checkmate with a king and knight versus a king and pawn. Stammer's mate. In the diagram showing Stammer's mate, white to move wins 1. nb4 plus car1 2, kc1 a2 3, nc2 # white also wins if black is to move first, 1, car1 2, nc1 a2 3, nb3 #. This checkmate has occurred in actual games. See the game between Jesus Nogueiras and Michael Gongora from the 2001 Cuban Championship, which preceded 81. kc2 car1 82, nc5 car2 if 82, a2 then 83, nb3 number 83, nd3 reaching the position in the first diagram, with black to move, 83, car1 84, nc1 black resigned here, but play would continue, 84 a2 85. nb3 # A similar position with the knight on d2 is more than 500 years old, identified as Partita N. 23 inches by Luca Pacioli in his MS de Ludo Scacorum, dated 1498 and recently reprinted by Abokar Museum Edizioni. 1. nf3 car1 2, nd4 car2 3, ni2 car1 4, nc1 a2 5, nb3 # Unusual mates. There are also positions in which a king and a knight can checkmate a king and a bishop, knight, or rook, or a king and a bishop can checkmate a king with a bishop on the other color of squares or with a knight, but the checkmate cannot be forced if there is no other material on the board. Nevertheless, it keeps these material combinations from being ruled a draw because of insufficient mating material or impossibility of checkmate under the FIDE rules of chess. The U.S. Chess Federation rules are different. In a typical position with a minor piece versus a minor piece, a player would be able to claim a draw if he has a limited amount of time left. 2 and 3 knights. 2 knights. It is impossible to force checkmate with a king and 2 knights, although checkmate positions are possible. In the second diagram, if black plays 1. car 8, white can checkmate with 2. nbc7 #, but black can play 1. kc8 and escape the threat. The defender's task is easy. He simply has to avoid moving into a position in which he can be checkmated on the next move, and he always has another move available in such situations. In the third diagram, one knight is guarding c1, leaving the other knight to try to checkmate. After 1 ndc3 plus car1, white needs to get the knight on e2 to c2. But if white plays 2 nd4, black is stalemated. Under some circumstances, two knights and a king can force checkmate against a king and pawn. The winning plan, quite difficult to execute in practice, is to blockade the enemy pawn with one of the knights, maneuver the enemy king into a stalemated position, then bring the other knight over to checkmate. Three knights and a king can force checkmate against a lone king within 20 moves. These situations are generally only seen in chess problems, since at least one of the knights must be a promoted piece, and there is rarely a reason to promote a pawn to a piece other than a queen. Bibliography